Thank you all very much for this morning. What we would like to do is to shift gears a bit, and we are having what we call dialogue with scholars. These are going to be more of the traditional types of academic presentations, but again, without any type of light show. It's all going to be back to the art of communication, the Emerson dialogues, the Blanquerna dialogues, which Joseph has indicated. So when we look at this, we have a list. If you turn out your program, you'll see the dialogue of scholars. We have our friends, if you look at them, from Rey Juan Carlos in Madrid. We have our colleagues from Catalunya. We also have colleagues from other places who will be joining. We actually have a guest group of Emerson professors who are going to be overseeing this. So Carrie, could you and Sharifa please come up? And if we could have our first presenters from Rey Juan Carlos, if you could come and join the stage. And if we have to add a few more chairs, we're more than happy to do so. So Carrie Thompson is a professor in political communication. She's very active in terms of advocacy. She's done a great job. We've worked together in Bahrain and other places with the State Department. So Professor Thompson.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Professor Sharifa Simon Roberts is a professor in pop culture, and she's also been part of the planning committee. So Sharifa, thank you so much for all that you're doing. We'll let you all run the show.
Greetings, everyone. It is an honor to stand up here with such an esteemed group of scholars in the room. I know that we have a lot of scholars to get through for this dialogue session, so we are hoping to keep the time in an orderly fashion. We're thinking maybe 5 to 7 minutes per speaker, and then hopefully leave a little bit of time for questions at the end. All of you have had great questions so far for all of the morning sessions, so I know that's important. Okay, I think we should start with the order listed in the program. Okay. And also, this is what we like to call a lunch and learn session, so please, if you would like to grab lunch and bring it back in here, you absolutely can eat while we are doing this as well. Oh, perfect, okay.
So we're getting started with our first presentation. It's entitled, What Have We Learned from COVID-19 in Business and Management, and What Are the Future Challenges? And so we have our two presenters, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and if they can share about 5 to 7 minutes of content.
My name is Alicia Blanco. I am Professor of Marketing in Rey Juan Carlos University, Madrid. And I'm very happy to return to DC and to meet two colleagues of Emerson College.
And we're honored to have you here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this invitation. In this occasion, I want to talk about our research, about what have we learned from COVID-19 in business and management, and what are the future challenges. In this point, it's important to say that my group is a group of the European Union project about the consequences of COVID in our bodies. It's the case of the long COVID. Some people suffer COVID, and today they are suffering the consequences of this virus. The first step in this European Union project was to analyze what type of papers, what type of analysis did in management and business field. Everybody knows that during the pandemic, there are a lot of studies about medicine, health system, but what happened with the business field? What is the answer to the companies and the consumer behavior? To answer this question, we did a bibliometric study based on concitation to reveal the intellectual structure of knowledge. This is very important because this study shows the challenges in our field. We analyzed more than 9,000 papers about COVID in our field. We analyzed this paper from a Web of Science database, and we obtained very relevant information about the research challenges. We found 11 clusters about the science in this field, and we checked that the most relevant cluster or analysis in business and management field is about, first of all, supply chain. Everybody knows the problems during the pandemic about the medical food sector, medical suppliers. The second cluster is about consumer behavior. It's very important to analyze the consequences of COVID in our brain. It's important to analyze the consequences during the pandemic, the impulsive buyer, the change in our consumer behavior, but I think this is very relevant to analyze the consequences of COVID. For example, we have published analysis about the health, the mental health in consumer behavior, and everybody now, today, we have very relevant problems with the mental health, stress, or anxiety. And COVID-19 shows this problem in the modern societies. The third cluster is about the small and medium enterprise companies, because they show the resilience to adapt to the new context, and the pandemic showed that the digitalization and the other force to work are here, and it's important to adapt the companies to this new reality. And the fourth cluster is about stock market, the consequences of the evolution of the pandemic in the stock market. It's interesting to say that the consequences in consumer behavior are in the future, but the question of the stock market is in that time of the pandemic, the action, the returns, the profitability changed. Moreover, there are other clusters about tourism, about work stress, about cyberchondria, the question of the fake news, or the question to find or to read a lot of news in internet, teleworking, the social education, the new application. In our paper, you should read a lot of questions about the future and a lot of questions that we should answer. And for me, the second step in this project is to answer third question. First of all, it's very important to me to analyze the impact of anxiety and mental health in consumer behavior, because we change our response when we go to the supermarket, for example. Secondly, or the second question is about the uncertainty. Not is the question of COVID alone, it's the question of the Ukrainian war, it's the question of the economical instability, it's the question of the virus. And it's important to analyze how consumer behavior adapt their consumer to this new and terrible context. And thirdly, for me, it's very, very important to analyze the long COVID. The long COVID generates the new group of consumers in business and management field. It's a disease, and the government needs to approve the regulation for this type of people. And it's very important to understand how feel this type of population that suffer in your brain, in your body, the consequence of the COVID. This is the first step of our research, and I think we could, or we ask a lot of questions about this, because European Union, government, give me money to answer this question. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much for that, and especially for talking about an issue that is affecting all of us across the world. So it's really timely research, and I very much appreciate you being here to talk about it.
Thank you.
Okay. I love this lineup of scholarship because there are so many important issues here. Our next topic, which we're skipping ahead by a couple, is titled Making Women's Sports More Visible, the FC Barcelona Case Study. We have a lot of scholars at Emerson that are very interested in women's sports. As we know, women's sports are getting much more popular across the world, so I think this is also going to be a very interesting subject. And we would like to welcome you. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. I'm Sandra Vilajoana. I'm professor of law and corporate communication in Blanquerna, in Ramon Llull University from Barcelona. And in this summit, we talk about the role and effects of communication for building bridges, but as those in the past, also through the lens of the United Nations Sustainability Goals, the SDG. Related to this, today I want to talk to you about gender equality, the 5th SDG, sports and communication strategies. In this short presentation, I like to focus on Football Club Barcelona, Barça, women's soccer team, case study to understand how a global brand with fans all over the world is working for increasing women's sports visibility, also through his communication strategy. Previously, just point out that the studies of gender remain an important area within sports communication research, as you probably know, and a wide body of research has demonstrated that women's sport continues to be greatly underrepresented in the media, as an example. So for us, Barça's mission is to be more than a club, and in the recent years, they want to be also more than empowerment. Through it's firmly committed to women's sport. So Barça women's soccer team's success story began in 2050 when a group of players led by Alicia become to reference or wants to become a reference in our society after Barça won the Champions League in 2021, being the first Spanish team to achieve it in a season where they also won other titles. In the words of Maria Teixidor, the former manager of Barça, who was the head of the women's team, the key success have been the effort to integrate the professional women's team into the structure of the club. That each area of the club feel the project as their own, from communication to sponsorship, through commercial and legal aspects, and work on co-creation workshops were held to define the best strategy to promote women within the club. Also, they want to generate a fan base to accompany the team, is another key aspect. And finally, to find complicity with the environment, the media, a key player for visibility, also to civil society and also sponsors. In terms of communication, that is our focus, we can highlight that Barça managed so well its own media. At 2050, the year in which Barça professionalized its women's soccer team, they, in their official magazine, they published a cover in which our football player Gerard Piqué taking a selfie with Alicia Putellas. Inside the magazine, the two soccer players talk about the rise of women's soccer. Alicia confessed to being totally anonymous, and 6 years later, she is the best football player in the world and has 1.5 million followers in Instagram. The bet on women's team was accompanied by a campaign on social networks. I could probably you follow them, with an account specific for the women's team. And likewise, Barça TV is another example. In addition to broadcast the matches of women's, began to generate content about their players. In the terms of external media, the objective of the club was to raise awareness in the sport press, knowing that the space dedicated to women's sports was scarce, and it would take time to expand it. Personal relationships were built with women's journalists, interviews were granted, and the team was also approached to women's magazines to approach also this team to society. Aware of the key role of the media, press conferences began to organize for the women's team, although with less media attendance than in the case of the men's. It's a slow process to keep the attention of media for this women's team. Also, the 3 point to point out is Football Club Barcelona Foundation campaigns and events, integrate players from the women's team to some programs, such as a program against bullying, or the traditional visit that players from the men's teams make to Barcelona hospitals at Christmas, which since 2019 features players from the women's team. Also, in 8M Day, claiming Women's Day was an opportunity to open the doors of the club, and between 2018 and 2020, 3 major events were organized to bring together diverse audiences: journalists, agents from the world of sports, artists, businesswomen, and civil society, among others, participating in all these events. All of this was accompanied by specific campaigns on social networks. And as you, I'm sure, probably know and remember, under the slogan of Magicians of the World, in 2018, Barça incorporated for the first time the women's team in the summer tour in the United States. In fact, it was the first time in history that a soccer club did something like this. The team visited Nike headquarters and closed a groundbreaking sponsorship deal with Stanley, where the US brand became the first sponsor team in their shirt. Alexia Putellas, probably you know his name, became Football Club Barcelona first ever winner of the Women's Ballon d'Or in 2021, and she repeated recently in 2022. She's the first ever 2-time winners of the honor, and it's in consecutive years. So she plays an important role for attract the attention of media and to be well known for all the society. In terms of sponsorship, only as an example, recently Barça and Grupo Bimbo, the world's largest bakery company, have reached an agreement for Bimbo brand to become this main partner for this woman former first team. And finally, the 23-year-old file world record attendance for a women's soccer match was broken, and probably also you know, in Barcelona this year. In March of 2022, a crowd of 91,553 was recorded at Camp Nou during the UEFA Women's Champions League match against Real Madrid. So it's the most evidence that a fan base is really accompany the team. And to conclude, for all these things, we can affirm that Barça is probably different than other clubs, and she's now already a reference of not only to be more than a club, but also more than empowerment for all the girls in the world. Thank you very much.
Iria is actually going to deliver a presentation on the effect of the Ukrainian war on company sustainability. So we're going to continue with that theme of business and commerce. So Iria, whenever you're ready.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. And thank you all for being here and for the opportunity. My name is Iria Paz, and I will speak about organizational sustainability. And organizational sustainability may be understood as a corporate philosophy. So it is not just a strategy, it is a way of being on Earth. And it evolves from the sustainable development concept and has a lot to do with achieving the SDGs through the 3 bottom line balance way of doing things. So it states the important role of companies in the global sustainable development and highlights balance among environment, society, and profits now, but also and especially in the future. So it is not about no producing or not consuming, but it's about how to do things to ensure the resources later on the long term. So it is a commitment. Now the Ukrainian war supposes a change of priorities and needs all over the world, and arises the question about how are companies reacting to that. So we took different companies from the IBEX 35 stock market in Spain, and we wondered if they were doing any kind of institutional communication about their positioning regarding the war, the Ukrainian war, and if they were doing any specific action supporting the Ukrainian people, and the evolution of their stocks in the market in the last 6 months. And we found that the energy companies have risen in the stock market in that 6 months, and the health and insurance companies have also risen, and also actively helping, doing things to support refugees, for example. And in the third place, that services companies are actively helping, for example, in hotels that are providing rooms or things like that, but are having losses in the stock market. So we think that perhaps we can think about if energy do not need to be sustainable to have profits. And health and insurance must be sustainable and overall must be congruent to have profits and also to have a good image on the society. And we saw that through the news. So we need to wonder about that and to keep an eye on greenwashing. So in that point, press has a lot to do, in our opinion, and has much to say. So to conclude, the Ukrainian war seems to unveil that the big companies do not need to be sustainable to grow, but they must be sustainable to help human rights. So big companies, especially big companies, not only, but especially big companies that develop their activities through the globalization, their globalized partners need to help human rights and have much to say to keep the world order or to provide a good quality of life for people on Earth. And it's not an issue just about the countries, but also the big companies. So thank you very much, and disposal.
Thank you.
Iria, thank you so much for that. And to learn more about the Ukraine war, we have a panel discussion coming up immediately after this one. So I think that was a good way to introduce that and lay the foundation as to things that are coming in a short while. For our final presentation for this particular dialogue with scholars, we are going to focus on the theme of how SMEs close to a university are affected by uncertainty. And so I'm asking Sandra and Jessica if you could introduce yourselves and share with us your content. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Sandra Escamilla, and I present with my partner Jessica Paule the investigation how small and medium enterprises close to a university are affected by uncertainty. We recognize the importance of a small and medium enterprise for the development and economy of the country. Large and small and medium enterprises are affected by economic and financial instability. So economic policy uncertainty is the one of main sources of uncertainty from the unforeseeable consequence of economic policy decisions. In Spain, small, medium enterprises account for 99.8% of total companies, 62% of gross value added, and 66% of total employed. In our work, we analyze the impact of EPU on business performance in small and medium enterprises with the differential aspect to do it in the university environment. The main objective with research is to offer information for regional development to business managers and economic policy makers. EPU management has an important role during time crisis. Baker et al. 2016 defined EPU as the non-zero probability of changes in existing economic policies. Our sample is composed for 449 companies in the Rey Juan Carlos environment. We select the period 2012 and 2020, present a wide variety of periods of higher EPU, for example, peaks death crisis, the Brexit, or the COVID-19 pandemic, among others. But it has more stable periods. In our study, we find that medium-sized companies achieve a higher average return, have been in the market for more years, and have more growth opportunities than small companies. Also, younger companies have on average higher ROA, faster asset turnover, and are more indebted than more mature companies. So my company continued with the research.
After the descriptive analysis, panel data analysis has been applied to test the objective of this study. The results show how economic policy uncertainty has a negative impact on the corporate performance. Therefore, we can demonstrate how this uncertainty reduces the performance of these companies. On the other hand, the size and age of the company do not influence the impact of this uncertainty on its performance. We can conclude that the study evidences the value of stability for small and medium enterprise signed economic policy uncertainty. This uncertainty has a negative impact on the economic and financial performance, and even on the profit margin of these companies. Furthermore, neither size nor age can moderate this relationship. These findings highlight the need to implement policies that help small and medium enterprise to manage economic policy uncertainty. The future line is to analyze more university context. For example, to measure the impact of American universities in economic development. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I know everyone's eating, but this title is a dialogue with scholars, so we would love to open it up to questions if anyone has questions for any of our presenters.
We need to understand the new consumer behavior. I remember one day in the supermarket, one woman began to cry, and I think everybody is crazy. And after that, in the airplane, one person moved the suitcase, and one man began to cry, "Please don't touch my suitcase." And I think we need to understand what happened in consumer behavior at the question of the mental health. Because when we speak about the SDGs, everybody speaks about environmental question of gender equality, but I think in our countries it's very important I think it's fourth or third SDG about the mental health, because we have forgotten the implication about the mental health. And in the case of Spain, the number of people with problems of anxiety, depression, stress is terrible. And the number of medicines to apply in this type of disease is amazing. And I think that everybody needs to understand that COVID generate that everybody speak about mental health. But I think that with respect to the communication sector and marketing field need to understand the new rules in consumer behavior, and that the companies need to understand that the high levels of music, the crazy retails is not the solution today. The consumer need to understand or need to feel relaxing when they go to the shopping, because the problem is that the people don't want to go to the roads to talk with other people, and it's our responsibility to understand that the mental health is one of the SDG, and we need to adapt our strategies to this new reality.
Thank you for that comment. Thank you. As we know, mental health, we've seen a resurgence with a lot of different areas related to that, especially since COVID, and since then, it's been a huge issue to be talking about, and you're right, we need to be talking about it more on many levels. Other thoughts or questions, things on your mind? Yes, sir.
My question was in relation to the visibility of the Barcelona women's team. Were there any analogs with what has been happening with the American women's team? One issue, I think, being about their pay and compensation. So, do they look to other teams that have, gotten, press and kind of there's issues, and maybe not only just the Americans, but maybe other kind of notable women's teams?
Yeah, this line of research about communication, sports, and society is new. We are starting to work on it. I don't know exactly the situation of United States in this field, but in Europe, it's true that there are some countries, England especially, France, Germany, who has increased a lot the interesting and the visibility of their women's soccer teams. Especially, but it's a slowly process in Europe. My perception is that you in the United States, you are more advanced in this goal, but in Europe it's a slow process, and I think that we increase a lot this visibility through the European country championships that took place in UK this last summer, and they reach they increase a lot the audience of the matches, and I think that it's a slow process in Europe, and in this case, Barça team is leading all these communication strategies, and it's a model for other countries and other teams.
Yes, yes, sir. Microphone is coming.
Thank you. This is also about the visibility of women's sports and women's soccer. Do you think it's easier for that sort of visibility to grow with a brand like Barcelona that's already established in order to attract more people there? Or do you think it's possible for women's clubs to start from the ground up and gain that same sort of visibility?
It's easier for a global brand as Football Club Barcelona, because they had a lot of relationship with the stakeholders that contribute to their success. But I think that it's a challenge for any club, and it's needed that global brands start to invest in this visibility, because well, we trust that it was the first stone to lead a process in which other sports that it's very needed, not only in soccer, that in Europe and especially in Spain is one of the most it's one of the sports that have more fans, but it's needed in all kind of sports, and I think that it's a process, and for global brands, for great teams is a little bit easier for these relations that they have with all the main stakeholders. Thank you for your question.
So Hello, so thank you for sharing your scholarship with us. So I'm going to selfishly engage in dialogue around COVID-19 and consumer behavior.
Yes.
So, and ask, before you leave, one of my research teams and I would like you to join us as a co-author, perhaps. So something we found interesting around consumer behavior relating prior to COVID and during COVID and after is that more consumers have a need for relationship building with retail stores and in-store salespersons in particular. So during COVID, we've seen heightened levels of social isolation, social loneliness, and also emotional loneliness. So we're learning a lot of things about the dimensionality of how people feel unattached to the world around them and how they're looking for shopping experiences to fill that social void. And so something that we are looking for some help with, right? We've looked at self-gifting, right? Self-gifting for reward and self-gifting for therapy and self-gifting for self-celebration and therapeutic motivation, things like that. And I know there's a lot more that we hope to learn. So if you would be willing, if we can have this, continue this conversation afterward. But it is, I think we're still learning how to unpack what has happened to all of us and then how we're going to deal with it. It seems like it's going to require a very collective solution in terms of how we engage. And last comment I would make is, it's been very clear that more of us as individuals, when we express ourselves as shopping consumers, we need to feel a sense of care coming in our direction, right? So I think we've all learned that it's important for us to feel heard and to feel seen. And I think that's something that every service provider ought to keep in mind, right? Government, retail, etc.
Very interesting. Thank you to our Dean of the School of Communication at Emerson for those interesting perspectives on that issue. Hi.
What you just shared, Brent, leads
Yes.
me to think about the role of our chemistry plays in all of that, because that's a serotonin story, needing to feel valued. The oxytocin story is the feeling of care, and the dopamine story is the feeling of reward. Testosterone is our strength, our inner strength. And as you do that work, I'd encourage you to investigate the story, the chemical story, and how we can influence those chemicals and achieve that right balance of optimal low cortisol, boosting those high performance happiness and status and social bonding and trust and reward chemicals through how we move, how we breathe, how we think, how we interact with each other. If people understand that they can actively manage the balance intentionally, then I think it's an easier win than just you should do it because it's the right thing to do. So I'd be fascinated to hear what you uncover if you look down that path, because I've done quite a lot of work in that area myself.
Hello, everyone. I'm with the CCMS department at Harvard University. My question actually goes to the speaker who spoke on women in sports. Yes. So, a Barca fan, forever a cooler, yes. But then I'm not particularly, I haven't really shown interest in like Barca women, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I believe that this goes beyond just gender. And speaking from the context of even Ghana, invisibility of women in sport is very paramount. So my question is, in your study, what other systemic factors or indices did you identify aside gender contributing to this invisibility? Because there are definitely other factors, because like our identities intersect and it influences the way women are represented in the media and all over. And the second question is, now identifying these indices, what structural changes or what structural strategies is BASA adopting or embarking on to ensure that this visibility that they are embarking on is not just a short term, but then is a long term and is not a one-day wonder? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your questions. Starting by the end, perhaps. I think, well, talking with them, they are being incorporate professionals from in all its structure to with the purpose to maintain it, to integrate professionals that manage only women's teams. The most relevant is the women's soccer team, but in other sections of the club there is also women's teams. And for instance, in the communication department there are more than 1 and 2 professionals that only manage communication for this team. Nowadays they open a new position for manage the social media. It's social media only for women's teams. So we trust in that este compromiso. I don't. Yes, it's really serious and it's for a long term. And about the factors, if I understand well, the question is the factors why women have so many visibility, or it's not equality in sports. Well, I think that it's a question of, as happens sadly in society, the tradition is focus the interest in men's competitions, and especially in Europe, media. I think that media is a key element in all this for gaining this visibility, and it's very, very, very difficult to reach space on the media to cover women's sport. So it's difficult, but it has changed slowly, and obviously a key factor is also the investment for the sports management and the decision to invest in women's teams to make efforts to construct the best teams to compete in all the fields. Thank you very much.
Yeah, actually, thank you so much to be here today. Actually, I'm learning a lot, and it's a great pleasure to have you all here. My question is about also the women's sport, because you mentioned about the media, and this is make maybe the women's sports more visible. Okay, I have maybe in the same situation, because I'm originally from Saudi Arabia, and in Saudi Arabia we have the government effort to support women's sport and also the media. So because there is like effort from the government, so the media should be cover all this sports. So, but also there is no a big visibility for women's sports. For example, last week, like that, there were big teams, clubs, soccer teams. They had their cup, and they actually did very well. But my question is, how can we motivate fans, like the soccer fans? How can motivate them to attend and watch the soccer match, especially when the players are women? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. Yes, I think that one way to increase the interest of the media is the responsibility. It's not only of the clubs or of the media. The fans could now more than ever with the social media to ask for the interest in this coverage. And for instance, in Spain, I remember it's to reach a cover of sports media in women's sport is very, very difficult, but sometimes it's all the fans that claim for this attention and share with hashtags, with movements that really wants to, or demands to the media discover. So it's a shared responsibility, of all of us could contribute to achieve this goal and the quality in sports. Thank you.
Thank you for everyone. That was a really fun and engaging dialogue. Thank you to our presenters. See everyone back in 15 minutes. Okay.